everybody. This is Michael Holdt and
Michael Wyatt.
there you go. And this is the Business of Music podcast, episode number 2. And people were asking me what I would do for this episode. I thought, let's keep this conversation hugely practical on the ideas of how a musician finds work. Now, there's many channels for that. One could be a recording, a contract. One could be, if you're a single musician, you may be wanting to audition for an orchestra or a band of your own, or you may want to be looking for your own church group to be part of. But what I'm talking about here is the grassroots of finding work, and that would normally start in a theater or maybe smaller than that in a club. I'm not a fan of the panhandling in the train station or on the beach or whatever have you. That's just something you do while you're doing everything else, and we'll talk about that. But what I'm talking about is, let's say you have a band, a 4-piece band or a 5-piece band, and you've practiced and you're ready to be playing out. What do you do? A lot of, Michael, do you have any thoughts on this from your experiences?
Well, when I was with the band Heathen Sent, we kind of did it the old school way, probably not the most efficient or effective way, but we were literally a garage band recorded in my guitar player's dad's garage, and we would make cassette tapes. That's how long ago that was. And we would spend Saturdays walking around 2 clubs that we'd gone and listened to other bands at, literally handing out cassette tapes with our phone number written on them. And then what would happen is we would hope that we'd get a phone call, and then if we did, we'd all go down there, sit down with the club owner, and he would basically offer us a night, tell us, say, 8 songs, and then he'd say, well, I'll give you guys $1,000. You can split it between the 4 of you, and that's exactly how we did it back then. It was before social media and anything.
So how would you choose what club to go into?
Well, we would go to a lot of the clubs ourselves because we'd hear things that they'd be Battle of the Bands at some clubs, or we'd hear about a local club in the area that was had a band playing, and we were thinking, God, we'd like to get into that club. So we would go to the clubs and looking at flyers that we would see other bands post, and then we would show up at those clubs and basically hand a cassette to that same club owner.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a take on how I would do this based upon what I've seen, because I think what you did was a little bit too spontaneous, without a plan. Okay.
Yeah.
I think what I've seen successful is, number one, you're checking out the clubs to see which clubs play the type of music you play.
Yes.
Okay, and then you have to go in there and have a recording of, say, 3 songs. Go up to the manager and ask them if they would try you in there, and work out your rate. But it is not just to do that in one club. It is to do that in, say, 3 or 4 clubs. So it is a full-time job initially to figure out what venues fit your music, which is another issue too, because if I'm putting a band together, I'm not just putting a band together of music I like. I'm putting a band together of music that I know would work in my town, or find a town where it would work. It's a business. You got to make sure that what you're doing sells. But then I would play that club and make sure that I have music that has a hook to it. In other words, you don't want to sound like every other band that's playing that club. Otherwise, you're going to be on a rotation and never get a residency, never get favored.
That makes sense.
What you're looking for is a residency where they'll say, okay, I want you every week, or I want you every 2 weeks on Friday nights, good prime nights. And if you have 3 of those, you have all of a sudden a place for the bands to play. Now, that isn't a living, but at least the band knows that while it's working on getting everything else going, that it has some income coming in.
Yeah, we were just a bunch of 30-year-old guys who really didn't know anything about the industry, and we just figured we'd hand out a bunch of tapes and hope that somebody gave us a call. And if I'd hand out 30 tapes, I'd probably get one call, and that's basically how we did it. We just handed out cassettes.
Okay. But that you said that was before social media.
Way before social media.
Now you can also take these things, put them online, and I love the fact that you can use online to be your own promotion, because you couldn't do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the tools that are out there in social media, like your Facebook sites, creating your own YouTube page. There's just so many ways out there that weren't around when I was doing that back in the early 80s that are here now that are at the disposal of musicians. It makes it so much easier.
Okay, so if you are a band up and coming now, you need to know what clubs are in your area. You need to be frequenting the clubs. You need to have 3 songs ready to show the manager. Once one club lets you play, other clubs will hear about you. And you then have a little bit of a resume to work off of. And they should let you in. If you have 3 or 4 clubs going on, then all of a sudden you're practicing for the show rather than practicing for an EP. And all of a sudden now you're playing out, and you're playing out live, and it makes your band tighter. It makes the EP that you're going to record better. So you're actually using the performance time to tighten up. It doesn't mean you're shorting the crowd because you're already good. I assume you're already good, but then you're going ahead and you're getting better at playing together, and that's when I would take those 3 songs that you used initially, re-record them along with 4 others. So you have 7. Now you have something to put on Spotify and actually copyright and put on Spotify and actually make some money from. And this is what I would do if I'm starting a band right now. You don't need a label. You just need promotion from this. I think the label sometimes gets in the way. Until you really know the type of music you're trying to emulate, because the label is only going to force you into their niche of what they're trying to do. And if you're not sure what you want to perform and they're pushing you into that, your band's going to break up.
I think kind of the way that I did it back then, there was much better way to do it.
Okay.
In other words, sometimes a record label can cut into your artistic integrity. And in other words, you have your style. You have the way that you want to play it and what feels right to you.
Yeah.
But what the record label is trying to do, they only want to create a package that they can market, and they want you to play the music their way, whether you like it or not.
And they may even not care if you crash and burn or if they use you and then spit you out. I've seen all of that.
They're trying to make money, and what you are to them is a product.
Yes. So I actually avoid the labels and go independent and find your own path with this and develop a following on social media. I seriously suggest that. You go to the label once you have enough following where you can tell the label what you're going to do on your terms. They will listen to that if they already know your following is established. And that is the part that a lot of the bands don't know. The other thing that happens is band members want to get a band together, and they want to practice and they want to do music, but they don't want to do the other part of promoting the band and going to the clubs. You have to do both to make it work.
Yeah, a lot of bands don't understand that it's not just playing music for fun. If you're serious about getting signed and getting your music out there, you have to have the mentality that it is a business, because it is a business.
And you have to have the drive to make it happen too. It is work, and you have to be motivated to do it no matter what.
And taking yourself out of your comfort zones is sometimes where you go beyond being a musician and you attempt things that you normally would not.
Right. So what we're talking about with that, and I already know what Michael's saying here, going out to the clubs and negotiating with the manager is actually something that I've seen a lot of musicians know they should do, and they just don't do it.
Yeah, you got to get to a point where you have no fear of presenting yourself.
Yes.
Because that's what you're doing. You are out there selling a product, which is you. It's your music, your band, and that club owner, he's in the business to make money. And if you can sell your band, your music to him, then he'll put you in his club.
And you need to believe in yourself more than you ever have before, because if you don't, then to the club owner, you are no different from any other band that is asking him for a night.
Absolutely, because you have to exude confidence. Mm-hmm. You have to show that there's something about your band, about your music that's different. Mm-hmm. Because what people want at clubs to see, they don't want to see the same bands over and over in the same style. They're looking for originality. What sets you apart from every other band that's played in his club? What makes you original? What would make you stand out so he could sell more tickets?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's another thing. If you do get people to your show and that club owner is making money, he will have you back. I've even seen some bands invest and give the tickets away.
Yes.
For the first few shows. This is not uncommon, even with major bands with labels. I've seen labels give away tickets to concerts, and people come to the concerts, sell out the place, or at least have a good following. And next thing you know, that band is busy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, if you give somebody something for free, and they enjoy it, then they're willing to come back for more and pay for it. And that's the reality of it. And getting them in the door and getting them to love the music and embrace it, mm-hmm. Once you get them in, you've got them, and you get them hooked, then you know what? The rest is easy.
Then you have swag, and then you have the ability to put yourself on Spotify and on Apple Music and whatnot have you. And all of a sudden, you can make money.
Because you're marketable.
And have an online store. And we're going to be right back, and we're going to talk about some of those side revenue ideas. We'll be right back after this message. Hello, we are back, and before the break, as we were leaving, I was telling everyone that I wanted to talk about swag and Spotify and whatnot, and how to make money. If you have your stuff out there, and I'm realizing, wait a minute, you need to understand what copyrights are, because that's how you make your money. If you have your music on Spotify, or if you're selling swag so that people will buy your music, people don't understand what the copyright is or how it works in the music business. So let me first say this. The music copyright is the only copyright in the business, in the world, in the States, that someone can remake your song or use your song if your song is copywritten without your permission. The difference is they have to pay you. They do not, however, have to ask your permission to do it. You have to find out. If they don't tell you, you have to figure out that they are using your song, and then you have to go after them for money. And you'll get it if you pursue that, because if it's obvious that they used your song, then they're going to have to pay you. They're going to have to pay you, or they'll get blacklisted off of YouTube and Facebook and other media outlets, because you could report them. But if they pay you, then you're making money. The copyright is about $25. It's a form from the U.S. Copyright Office, and it's a $25 form that you have to pay per song that you submit along with the song that proves that you wrote it. And as long as you have that, you can put your music on the Spotify and on the social media outlets. And if people buy your music, you're going to get paid for that. Spotify is a little tricky, because sometimes I've found that they are not paying their artists. That is another story. But the copyright's important. Now, I know there are a lot of websites and sites out there that claim that if you send them your music, that they will copyright it for you. Don't fall into that trap, because that becomes a public domain problem. Because if you give your music to another site, they then can use it or share it as public uh, as public uh, domain, so music, and you will not be able to copyright it from that point on. So it is called the poor man's copyright. The other thing that I've seen people do as a poor man's copyright is to do an album and put and process the album with the copyright office for $25. You don't want to do that. You want to copyright each song and the album separately, because otherwise, when you sue anyone over it, you can only sue them once, because it's one infringement. If you have every track copywritten and the album copywritten, you can sue them for as many songs as they had on the album plus the album name. And lawyers will you can find lawyers like in L.A. who will take on that type of case. But if you have one copyright on everything, they call it the poor man's copyright, the lawyers will actually not take it because there's not enough money in it. So you need to copyright every song you write. Now, let's say you're in a band. Trying to cover all the angles here, because there's a lot of really important stuff to say and mistakes that people make. Let's say you're in a band and you write a song and you give it to the band for them to perform, and it has never been performed live before, but you're doing this with them. It is still your song. You have a copyright on your song, and then when the band records it, you copyright the band's version. And then when it is played, you make a portion for writing it, and then you also make a portion for it airing, for it playing. So you get double the money, versus if you just have the band copyright, then you cannot get payment compensation for writing it because the band owns it. So you need, for example, the Beatles. A good third of the music that was written by the Beatles was actually written by Paul McCartney. People don't know that. They think John Lennon did it. John Lennon fronted the music, but Paul McCartney wrote it. Paul McCartney owns those songs. He copywrote those himself. He did not, as he said, give them to the public just because music is everybody's music. He actually makes money whenever that music is performed. The copyright is very important. I'm finding a lot of artists aren't copywriting their music at all, and they resist doing it because they are anti-establishment. But then they're never going to make any money except when they're paid at a show. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So there are a lot of musicians and bands that are anti-establishment who don't seem to go for the copyright. It's a big mistake. And it also can lead to a band breaking up. A lot of times people think that by doing the copyright, they're going to break up the band. I think that by not doing the copyright, they will break up the band. You seem to have something you want to say, Michael? And then
Well, the thing is, people try to be anti-establishment, and what happens by being that way, they somehow think that gives them more power. In a sense, what they do is they take away their power by being anti-establishment, because once you don't copyright your songs, you've given up your protection. And if your stuff is not protected, the same people that you're trying to be anti or against benefit from you. And it's the complete opposite of what you want to do. So the smartest thing as an artist is to copyright your stuff. And it's actually very, very easy to do. It's not difficult.
Right. So let me give you another example of why this is really important to do, because let's say you're in a band and you're working for rehearsals. First of all, if you play your song in public and you don't copyright it first, you lose the right to copyright it if anyone proves that you copyrighted it after the public performance.
Yes.
Because as soon as you play it in public, if it's not copyrighted, it's public domain.
Yes.
Public domain, and therefore you are stuck. You're kind of screwing yourself over.
In a sense, you've given away your music.
You've given away your music. Now let me give you another reason why this is so important. You are 4 or 5 members of a band, and you are working to create new music, and you have the passion to work together to do this. So you put together 7 songs, and you decide to go out to the club to let them hear you, and they decide to book you on a Friday night. Now they're taking a risk because it's original music. They don't know if people are going to like it, and they're taking the chance on you. And they're saying, okay, we're going to give you $400. So there's already a little stress because you're not getting paid much. You're getting paid $100 a person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you go ahead and you do the show, and then the next night you have another one that is $100 a night for each, and then you have the next one. And let's say you don't have this stuff protected. So what happens then is the band gets fed up. They think they're not making enough money. They get into a fight. They break up. And as I've heard musicians say to me, oh my gosh, I got into a fight. The band broke up, and all of this was for nothing. Nothing was gained. Nothing was had. Well, if you had copywritten your music, and if you had made an LP, and had you set it up with Apple Music and Spotify and other venues like this, you would have your own resume out there, and you would have had something to show, and you would be having mailbox money. They call mailbox money because the check comes in the mail, and you don't know when it's going to come, and all of a sudden you have a few $100s of a check in the mail because the BMI or ASCAP or Spotify or whatever have you is paying you for what you did. If you don't do that, you're not going to get the money, you're not going to get the checks, and as soon as the band breaks up, you're not going to have anything to show for it. It's up to the artist to do this extra work, to protect their music and to protect their craft and to make sure nobody steals their stuff.
Yeah, and that's the smartest thing you can do, because there are definitely people out there who will take advantage of an artist. And once your project becomes, or your song becomes public domain, then anybody who hears that song can take that song and copyright it, even if they hear that in the club. If you don't, because anybody could say they own it if you don't already own it ahead of time. And the smart thing to do is once you copyright it, then you own it. And the thing is, we put a lot of energy as artists into creating our music, writing songs and stuff. And let's say your band does break up. Do you want all that energy and that time you put in it to amount for nothing? At least you should get something out of all your hard work and have something to show for it.
So let me explain to you what Michael means when he says that someone could take your song and they could copyright it themselves. They technically could do it because the Copyright Office does not know that it is stolen. However, if you have a copy previously and you can show the Copyright Office that you actually wrote it, you're not going to necessarily get it copywritten because it's public domain, but the other guys will be revoked because it will be proven that it was public domain before the other guy went for it. So, but if you don't do anything about it, it will be a copyright, and he will be getting the revenues from that music. So if you don't protect yourself, you don't protect yourself.
And all your energy and effort to create and write and compose that song was in vain.
Yeah. And so now when we come back from the break here, I'm going to begin to talk about what you do when you have your music on Spotify and Swag and whatnot. Or should we go ahead and explain how someone copyrights a tune? When we come back, we're going to go ahead and explain the process for the copyright.
We'll be right back.
And we are back, and we are going to talk still about the copyrights because I still think that there are artists out there who are so anti paperwork and so anti computers that they're not going to do this. I want to explain to you how easy it is to do this, so that you're not afraid to take the challenge and you do it. Mike, do you have an idea?
Yes, because I've done it before. It's simple as you going on to libraryofcongress.com, and there are several forms on there. There's one for copywriting of a song, of music. There's also copyrights of, like, if you were to write a movie script or something, and you just basically you download it, you write it out, you write out all the names of the members of the band who performed on that song or who wrote it. And then you take that and you have a copy of the song on a CD and the lyrics of the song typed up. And then basically you mail that in with a $25 check. Basically, it has to be a money order. That's the most important thing. And you want to send it certified mail, because that way you get a receipt back saying that somebody at the Copyright Office did receive it. Because I've known of artists.
You have to keep track of this, because there can be sloppiness going on.
Absolutely.
And you can't just mail it off and then expect it to be back. Put it on your calendar to wait 30 days, right? And then
Yes.
So have you ever seen any flubs?
Oh yeah, that's why if you don't send it certified mail, you don't know that they actually received it, and that's your proof that somebody at the Library of Congress received it. So when I get my copyright certificate back, I take that and I staple the original money order receipt with that certified mail receipt. And that way I can say, you know what, it was sent off, I've got the copyright, and here's the proof that they received it and that it's mine. But there's been cases where, because they're so busy, because not only do they copyright your music, they're copywriting people's books, they're copywriting scripts for films. They're very busy, and stuff literally gets lost.
I guess everyone believes that because they just know. So, but if you have copies of this, you can prove it's yours and nothing is lost. That's the good news. You got to do it. I know that for me personally, I've never had anything lost. It's always come back to me, and I have a filing cabinet full of that stuff. But others have not been so lucky to come out of this unscathed. But the fact of the matter is, Mike, even with yours, you still were able to resolve it. And
oh yeah. Well, when I didn't receive, they say it's 30 to 45 days, and when I did not receive it after 60, I said maybe I better reach out. And there's really not a phone number you can call, but what there is an email.
Okay.
And what I did is I did an inquiry email, and I basically explained it. I sent a scanned copy of the money order receipt and the certified mail, and literally within 3 days, I had an answer back, and they said they never received it. So what I had to do was cancel that money order and redo everything all over again. But I would never have known if I didn't keep track of the date of when I mailed everything.
Okay. Then you got to send it certified?
You have to send it certified, because if you don't send it certified, there's no proof they received it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We will be right back. And we are back. Our third episode of the business of music. Our third episode is going to be probably about 2 weeks from now, and we are going to be discussing in that episode the basics of how you run and start a band, because a lot of band members don't know how to do it. The public seems to be very interested in hearing this too. So we're gonna do that. What we're gonna do in this next segment today is go over the basics of how you find players, which is a real challenge sometimes. I've heard a lot about band members like going about it the wrong way, like sending an email to their business and their best friends and their places of work and saying, "Does anyone play an instrument and want to form a band. That's so random and chaotic, and to me doesn't even make sense, because for me, if you're doing something in music, you need a direction and you need an audience, a specific audience. In this case, an audience of musicians. You don't find that at your work. So what I do first of all is frequent the clubs that I know have quality players, and go out there and listen to the music and see if I see any players that specifically catch my eye. By catch my eye, I mean they have to have stage presence, a swagger about them. They can't be looking at a chart. They can't be reading music. They have to be backup singing if they're not main singing. They have to be participating in the band, not just standing there like a twig. I call it a tree trunk. And watching music or just playing, staring out into space. I see lots of that. That's not what I am looking for in a band player. I'm looking for someone who's into the music, who's engaged in the other players, who is really understanding the swagger of the tune and is playing that, who is not overplaying. Someone who knows the notes and knows the chords and is spot on with that. Someone who knows the dynamic range and can play soft or can play loud or whatever the song requires at that moment. Someone who can solo and rock the house down on their own if they're given the opportunity to do so without just playing some basic chords and mucking their way through it. So I don't want to sound like I'm stuck up on this, but that's what I'm looking for. The reason why I bring these things up is if you don't find people who have all those qualities, the chances of you using a person in your band is greatly reduced. The success rate is greatly reduced if this person doesn't have all of those abilities. Even if you're not going to use all of that right away, you have to have someone who can handle the gig. Let me give you an example. When I was doing Prince, working with him, his management initially called up and said, we have a concert. Each concert is 36 songs. Well, when I got to the practices, I realized they wanted me to learn 67 songs. And a lot of the members of the band were copying an attitude or complaining because they thought that was an awful lot to ask for and didn't really know if they had the time or the ability to learn all of that music. I looked upon it like, okay, you're playing with the real band, and why not have the opportunity to play every song in the directory with him when and if he wants to do that song during one of his shows, because that's just more interesting stuff. Now, it took me months to learn all the music, but afterwards I could say all of those tunes were played at one point or the other. And if you're a member of his band and you're not and you don't know all those tunes, you're holding him back. You're holding the band back. So there is an understanding that you're going to play probably 36 songs in the night, but you're gonna need to know everything that's on the repertoire list for the entire tour in order to know that you're up to speed with the whole band, with what they're doing. And there were a couple of people who were upset, but I just took it as, okay, this is what you need to do to play with this band. And you kind of realize you don't want to hold the band back. If Prince wants to play a particular song and you don't know it, that's not cool either. So you have to have somebody when you are when you are judging someone for an audition. You need to have someone who has the attitude that they'll do whatever they need to do for the band.
Absolutely.
And if that person shows that attitude, the band's going to also reciprocate and make sure that that person has whatever they need too. So it's a family.
You got to look at it that too. It's because your bandmates, the people in that band, you basically, when you're touring with them, you're living with those people. So everybody, it's all about not only the musicianship, it's about personalities. And when you're bringing somebody into a band and auditioning, they can have great musicianship, but they have to be able, everything has to gel, everything has to mesh with that band member. In other words, if they have to be a good fit, they have to be, it has to be somebody you have to be able to ask yourself, hey, could I spend the next 60 days being around that person all the time?
You also have to have a talk with them, because some players consider themselves session players only, and they want one or two rehearsals, and then they want to perform, and that's it. I'm not going to judge that, but that's not the way I am. And if I'm doing the music, I'm doing the music for the music, and I'm looking for a musician who is wanting to do that too. And therefore, once the band knows all the music, are there places to play? Yes. Will we be playing them? Yes. Is that going to be a problem? No. But the band has to do the work to get all of that music down.
Mm-hmm.
You need someone who has the attitude that they're going to do that.
It's a team effort.
Yes, it's a team effort.
And you guys are all, and if one person in the band is off, then it throws everyone off.
That's right. That's right. So I'm not trying to preach it, but you need to find someone who has those qualities. Now, reading. When I ask someone if they can read, they're automatically thinking that I'm looking for a session player, and that's just not true. The fact is that if someone in the band brings in a chart that they wrote and we need you to read it, we want you to read it. So it's meant as a tool for learning the music. A lot of musicians think that anyone looking for a musician who can read music is looking for a session player for 2 days. That's just misguided. So
yes.
we need that. I'm looking for someone who plays with soul, who's almost telling a story, whether they're playing a guitar, a keyboard, or anything else, and they're not just playing notes and going through the motions of it. So I guess that's what turns me on the most, is when they're actually telling a story just by playing their guitar. Willie Nelson does that. He's playing the guitar and he's telling a story. He doesn't have to say a word. And he's not necessarily rocking out either. He's just doing a ballad or something, but everyone knows what he's feeling.
It's all about the energy of the way he's playing it, because that energy conveys the emotion, and that emotion tells the story.
Yeah, there is an energy that is put forth from it too. Yes, you have to feel it. So that's what I'm looking for in a musician. Now, the singer is a different animal, because I do not believe that every singer can sing any tune given to them, but I do believe that any musician can play any song given to them. So you have to look at the singer and literally see if they can play. If you want the hard rock, see if they can do that. If you're looking for the ballad, see if they can do that. A lot of singers are very, very particular about what they want to sing too, which I think is sometimes a mistake. But other times they just simply know what they can do and what they can't do, so therefore, sometimes when I'm with bands, I have more than one singer. That's truth. So
yes, and what I've told my students in the past when I was teaching vocal students was flexibility and adaptability is huge. You have to be, in other words, if you're with a band, not every song they sing you're going to like. But as a member of that team, a member of that band, you have to be willing to perform every song, whether you care for the song or not. And a sign of a good vocalist is adaptability and flexibility.
So it is a business, and you have to be able to do whatever the band needs. Now, the member may say, okay, this is a rehearsal. I'm not paid for this. I don't want to do this song. Well, there may be a song that person writes that I don't want to play, but I'm still going to play it because he brought it to the band, and if the band wants to do it, I'm going to play it.
It's part of the team.
It's just part of the team. You have to do it. And we've seen a lot of people with attitudes.
Yeah, it's like the old saying is leave your ego at the door.
Right.
And because, attitudes, all they do is hinder the creative process and hurt the team.
Yep. So I don't want to sound like we're preaching stuff, but basically that's the dynamic of finding a good musician. And we're going to talk about, I guess we in a couple of episodes we're going to write a song on the air too, so that people can see how that is done. But we want to talk about what happens in the process of writing and rehearsing an original tune. It gets into how do you tell the story that it is believable, making sure that everyone is really into the story and tells their story. When we're auditioning someone, we want to make sure that they are able to do that. It's an emotional moment, not a cookie cutter one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if somebody's just playing and going through the motions, you can tell the difference. In other words, with lackluster playing. In other words, if their energy has to be into it, and if the emotional component is missing, it's so obvious.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, we will be right back. And we're back. And before we leave you today, I do want to thank our sponsors, Trexas Cymbals and
Neumann microphones.
That's right. No, and I've said this during some of the other episodes, but I will say this again because they help us out. I use Trexas cymbals and endorse them and have my own line of that because I've used Zildjian too. I do not like pasty because I find that they are they don't flow with the music. Other people may disagree with me, but I do not feel that they flow with the music. Zildjian does, but the Trexas does better because it is more musical. It is if I tap it, there's more tones at the low range and there's more tone at the high range, and I can do cymbals rolls and I can do taps and whatnot, and the cymbals just sound so pure and crisp and tonal that I actually like them better than the Zildjian cymbals. I'm going to suggest that people go to the Facebook site where they can hear me playing them and judge for yourself, because if you're looking for cymbals, you may want to consider Trexas instead of the Zildjian. I say that out of true love of the cymbal, and so I encourage you to explore that.
And Neumann microphones, I would say, are truly amazing. The quality of the sound is unparalleled. Your highs will sound high, your lows will sound where they're supposed to, and your mids will sound the way you hear them with your ear. It's the truest quality sound I've ever experienced in my career in music. I've used other microphones, and other mics have good points too. But if you want top-notch performance, nothing beats a Neumann.
Okay, so with that in mind, we will see you on the other side for episode 3 of The Business of Music. Thank you.
Thank you.